From winning a European title,
for a moment they've waited on for years. 17 for silverware, 41 for this. Tottenham Hotspur are the UEFA Europa League winners.
to barely winning games.
You feel that was a fairly gutless performance?
I'll go further, Paul. It's the kind of performance that got Nuno sacked at Tottenham. The obvious, this isn't working, to this isn't going to work, is it?
From playing attacking football under Ange,
Kulusevski curling in, Madison arriving, and Spurs lead at the Etihad.
to barely creating any chances at all.
It's more that you're thinking, how are they going to score a goal? How are they going to win the game?
What the hell happened with Tottenham Hotspur? When Thomas Frank arrived, I was excited. I loved watching Ange ball, but it was clear that the club wanted to go a different direction. They wanted to be better defensively, so who better than a manager like Thomas Frank? A man who had helped Brentford punch above their weight year after year. But managing Brentford and managing Tottenham are two completely different worlds. At Brentford, being pragmatic made sense. You're the underdog most weeks, you set up to survive, you pick your moments, and you get results by being disciplined and in knowing to play against. And that's fine. But when you walk into Tottenham, the expectations change immediately. You're expected to dominate the ball, play proactive football, take the initiative, and actually impose your ideas on games. You're managing higher quality players, more international players, more egos, and dealing with Champions League demands. You're not setting up to steal points anymore. You're supposed to be the team driving the game. Right now, Thomas Frank looks lost in the environment. He's gone way too cautious. Spurs play like a team terrified of making a mistake rather than a team trying to win football matches. The entire setup feels like a relegation battle game plan that's been stretched across a full season. There's no ambition, no risks, no desire to take control. Just a constant obsession with not losing their shape. He focuses way too much on the opposition instead of building Spurs' identity. Every week the structure changes depending on the opponent, which is fine, but Spurs themselves never look any better. You can't build chemistry, confidence, or patterns of play when the team is changing tactically every week like Frankenstein. The press is a mess. I'm rhyming like Eminem. Spurs go to press, then half the team pulls back. Then the midfield steps up, but then nobody follows. It's disjointed and very easy to play through. Teams with far less talent slice through them like it's nothing. The attacking structure is basically non-existent. There are no rotations, no combinations out wide. They just play safe passes to the wing and cross and inshallah. And then on top of that, they either pray for a corner or for a long throw from Danso. The midfield spacing is all over the place. Sometimes they overload one side and leave the entire middle of the pitch completely empty. We saw that multiple times against Arsenal. Other times, both pivots sit on top of the center backs, making them defend too deep. Then when they do win the ball, the team cannot sustain possession outside of their first third. The moment they cross the halfway line, it's like these guys get a nosebleed. Everything collapses. They panic, they rush, they hit these aimless balls into the channels, and their momentum dies instantly. It's literally football without a plan. Even the fans who are normally patient, the ones who don't mind defensive football or grinding out results, are running out of tolerance. Spurs fans want to see football on the front foot. They want to see an identity. They want to see a belief in their team when they have the ball, when they're attacking. Right now, watching Spurs feels like watching a team that doesn't believe in what it's doing. They're slow, predictable, and incredibly boring. And that's the worst part. The lack of belief. Spurs do not look like a team playing for their manager. I mean, this was very obvious when Jed Spence and Van de Ven ignored Thomas Frank at the end of the match. They don't look connected. They just look like a team going through the motions with no idea of who they are or what they're trying to become. Now, Thomas Frank isn't helped by the fact that some of the profile of players that he has aren't the best. Everything starts and completely falls apart in the midfield. Spurs' center backs spend the entire match avoiding them like they're Bonnie Blue. Every time one of them checks into space, the defenders ignore them because they know that giving them the ball is basically gifting the opponent a transition. If your defenders don't trust your midfield, your entire build-up collapses. It's not just tactical either. The players just don't look like they want to fight. If you can't play under pressure, okay, fine, but at least dominate the match physically. In a North London derby, Arsenal just walked through them. Timber manhandled Spurs' entire right side for the full 90 minutes. Xavi Simons looked scared by the end, pulling out of duels, getting bodied by Rice. Spurs reminded everyone of a simple truth. Big games are won in the midfield. And right now, Spurs just don't have a midfield that's ready to compete at the highest level. The thing is, someone like Paulinho isn't even a bad player. He's just being used the wrong way. He could be very good with the right partner. His whole job in a normal setup would be to win the ball, give a simple pass to someone who can actually progress it, and that's it. So now you have two players doing identical things, and neither of them offer what the modern game demands, which is progression, composure, and creativity.
That final pass, all three of the attacking players, Simmons, Odebear and Tal, just wasn't getting it off to each other at the right time, hogging onto the ball a bit much. But I'm sure Thomas Frank will want to see more from Simmons.
It's a double pivot designed for low blocks and counter-attacking football, not for a club that is trying to play in the Champions League. The attack is just as big of a disaster as the midfield, maybe even worse. Spurs are one of the worst attacking teams in the entire league by expected goal.
But again, I keep going back to the underlying numbers, and some people don't like it. Chances created or the XG. It's very low and it's very poor.
I'm not talking about mid-table bad, not even we're struggling a bit bad. I'm talking about third worst in the league bad. That's shocking for a club with this squad, this budget, and these expectations. Spurs have produced the two worst attacking performances in the entire Premier League this season. They got 0.07 expected goals versus Arsenal, and then 0.1 versus Chelsea. Two of the worst performances against their two biggest rivals. And when you watch them, the numbers make sense. The team creates nothing. There's no spark, no imagination. They look like an AI-generated football team, THFC. Like there's technically players on the pitch, but there's no life. Even one of their better performances, like in the Champions League against Villarreal, was so flat, it felt like a punishment to sit through. Every attack was either sideways, backwards, or a hopeless cross into the box. The worst part is that they have creative players. Simons, Kudos are legit creative talents. They should be combining, breaking the lines, playing quick 1-2s, slipping balls in behind. Instead, Spurs are at the bottom of the league when it comes to through ball. How do you have that level of attacking talent and produce the fewest defense-splitting passes in the league? And the answer is very simple. Thomas Frank's system handcuffs them. And I'm not talking about in a good way like in the bedroom. It's way too pragmatic, way too cautious. He's way too obsessed with the shape to let his attackers play with freedom. Everything is rigid and predictable. It's just slow, risk-free football where the forwards are starving to death, waiting for service that never comes. And when you look at the profile of their attackers, they have a lot of moments players, as I like to call them. There are guys who can produce something special maybe once or twice a match at most. But outside of that, they just drift. You can survive with one of those players, maybe a couple. But Spurs currently rely on 4 or 5 players who disappear for long stretches and only come alive when they see a highlight reel opportunity. No team can function like that. So you end up with this weird contradiction. It's a team full of attacking names on paper, but they look absolutely lifeless in practice. It's a team with technically gifted players who play like they don't know each other when they reach the final third. The attack isn't just underperforming, it's fundamentally broken. And the worst part is that there are no signs of them improving anytime soon. Injuries absolutely play a role in how bad Spurs look. Nobody's denying that. They're missing important players. These guys are huge pieces of what Spurs want to be, and their absence does hurt. I mean, if you take away the focal point striker, one of the most consistent wide creators, and their main playmaker, the attack is always going to suffer. And it hasn't been helped by the fact that players like Xavi Simons and Kolo Muani haven't had any rhythm. They haven't adjusted fully yet. Odebear has had flashes, but he's nowhere near the level of carrying a top 6 attack. He shouldn't be expected to replace the version of Son from 2 or 3 years ago. That's an impossible task for a kid still learning the league. But even with all that said, injuries are not the whole story, not even close. Even with a fully fit squad, I don't think Tottenham are ready to compete with the big boys yet. At best, the squad still looks like a Europa League team. Maybe they could push for the top 5 on a good run, but there are just many teams better than them right now. I don't even think you can use injuries as a sole excuse because I don't see the football getting any better even when the players come back from injury. The structure is still poor. The patterns are still missing. The midfield can't progress the ball, and their press still falls apart. Even with a player like Kulusevski when he's back, he's not going to receive the ball in good zones because the buildup is broken long before it even reaches him. Yes, availability helps, but it's not going to just magically improve the system. The problems are bigger, deeper, and they're more structural than just who's on the team sheet. A lot of Spurs fans before were saying that expected goals, the stat, doesn't tell the full story. And for sure, for one game that's true, but over a season, over a few months, those numbers rarely lie. They always catch up. And right now, the stats paint an even worse picture than what we're seeing with our eyes. And that's saying something because what I'm watching is already pretty bad. Like Spurs' underlying numbers are straight up relegation level across the board. They have 10.4 fewer expected goals than they did at this point last season. They've conceded 4.7 more expected goals than they had at this stage last year. Their attacking output has basically been cut in half. Their defensive metrics are significantly worse despite playing a more pragmatic style. And on top of all of that, they were sitting 15th in expected points. This is genuinely alarming. Earlier in the season, people tried to convince themselves that everything was fine by looking at the goals against column in the table. They pointed at the clean sheets, the low score lines, the switch to a more defensive setup. But the truth, the real truth, is that the defensive stability was an illusion. The underlying numbers, even from the start, were bad. They were conceding high quality chances every match. They were still getting sliced open in transition. They were constantly giving the ball away in dangerous areas. The only reason the goals weren't going in was simple. Vicario was playing like a superhero. And on top of that, opponents were missing clear-cut chances. That kind of luck doesn't last. And as soon as it dried up, the poor results followed. Suddenly, Spurs started conceding exactly the same goals that they had been getting away with all season. And look at the games that exposed them. Villa, Chelsea, United, all teams in awful form before they played Spurs. They came into the match struggling, beat Spurs, and then immediately went back to being terrible the next week. It had nothing to do with those teams stepping up, and it had everything to do with Spurs being the easiest side to play against. Teams don't even need to be good right now to beat Tottenham. They just have to be semi-competent. Especially when Spurs were at home. When your numbers say you're a bottom 5 team and your performances match it and the results start matching it too, that's when you know it's not just a blip. In the words of Ange Postecoglou, it's who you are. And that's why the stats are so terrifying. They already look terrible on the eye test, and now the data backs that up. Every time Spurs get hit in transition, their entire structure falls apart instantly. It's the same pattern every match. The midfield shifts too far to one side, the spacing collapses, and suddenly there's a giant hole in the middle of the pitch that any half-decent team can just run straight through. The backline steps up while the midfield drops. The wingers press while the fullbacks hesitate. It looks like 11 players all responding to different instructions. And that's the worrying part. They genuinely look like they don't know where they're supposed to be. There's no cohesion, no recognition of danger. It's like watching a team that skipped half their training session, which leaves 3 possibilities. Number 1, the players are ignoring the instructions. Number 2, the coaches can't properly establish a consistent system. Or number 3, everyone involved is clueless. None of those options inspire confidence. At a top club, you should be at least able to see an idea, even if the execution is shaky. But with Spurs right now, there is no idea. There are no recognizable patterns. No shape that survives more than one pass under pressure. The emotional state of the club might be the biggest issue. Spurs fans feel absolutely nothing watching this football. No excitement, no hope, no connection. Frank ball has become something that people have to endure instead of something that they look forward to. It's like me watching Vinny play. These poor guys are depressed. Every game feels like a chore for both the players and the supporters. You can literally see the connection between the manager, the squad, and the fans fading week by week. Like, fans spent months complaining about Ange and Nuno, but even those teams had an identity. Under Ange, Spurs weren't always good, but at least they tried to play on the front foot, and of course they lifted silverware. Under Nuno, the approach was limited, but at least you could see the shape. You could tell what the team was attempting. Right now, Spurs look like a broken team. The performances are bad, the metrics are bad, and the vibes are bad. Spurs fans have seen this movie before.